Hey everybody, welcome to Living Room Labs. A little bit of change in scenery. We're actually in my living room. But today, first I want to start out today with a little story. And I'm sure as a parent, you probably have heard this story before in your own house. I was sitting quietly one morning in my favorite chair, just sort of hanging out, and I got maybe, 2 or 3 sips into my coffee, and I heard, screaming and yelling and weeping and gnashing of teeth, and it felt like either someone is wildly exaggerating something or I'm about to call 911. It was one of those moments, and I'm sure as a parent you've had those moments. So I put my coffee down and I go down to the basement where the kids were. And 2 of my kids, my younger 2, were fighting. And one had drop kicked the other one and in the face, and it was a big ordeal. But it was one of those moments where I could have yelled and gotten upset. And sometimes I admit that's my reaction at first, is to get upset with them. But this moment was one of those like perfect parenting moments. It's rare for me, but I did it, and I got down to their level, and I listened to them, and I had all kinds of grace. But and you would think, and my first reaction was, if I do this, then they're gonna have a much different reaction to me, and it's gonna be much better, and it's gonna be awesome, and it's gonna be this fantastic thing, and I'll be this brilliant parent. And honestly, that's not what happened. In fact, my daughter got so almost, I think, maybe thrown off by it, that she actually started going on this long diatribe how she's the worst kid in the world and we should just sell her to an orphanage. Now, after I reminded her that there really aren't orphanages that buy children, that's not really a thing, but she went into this huge self-deprecating, self-loathing, I'm a terrible child. Now, I picked up on what she was kind of doing, was that overreaction because she knew she had done something wrong. But what I noticed, and what it got me thinking about, was this idea that how hard we can be on ourselves. And even after she recovered, and we calmed the house down a little bit and got the 2 to apologize to each other and worked out the whole issue, she still was very hard on herself and just was very, not just remorseful, she was, but more than that, she just kept putting herself down over and over and over again, which actually, interestingly enough, made punishing her for her actions a little bit more difficult. So either it's a stroke of brilliance, or she's struggling a little bit with self-worth. And I think that's true for a lot of our kids, where our kids sometimes, I think even all of us, sometimes struggle with really understanding our value, because we sort of look to get our value from the things that we do, right? And I think our kids naturally pick up on that and maybe just naturally do that, where how they behave, or how we perform at a job, or how we believe that we're performing as parents, how good we are at a sport, how good our kids are at a sport or an instrument or a subject at school, all of these things that they can do, they sort of start to tie their self-worth into. But what happens then when they fail, right? What happens when they actually fall down, and we have to, as parents, pick them up and dust them off and help them through those moments, which that kind of failure is actually good and healthy. We want them to fail at some things because it teaches incredibly valuable lessons. But, it just gets me thinking of how in the world can we help them keep their worth and their value and their purpose and their feeling of who values them and how they're valued beyond what they do. And I think that's where grace comes in. And I think that's how we can really help our kids understand the concept of grace. Now, I've heard a lot of parents over the years in teaching in other places misunderstand grace. In fact, I had a parent one time when I was teaching that I had a student that broke some rules on the football team, and I had to bench him as a result of breaking those rules. And that was the team rules. That's what we all agreed on. And they broke those team rules, and so a couple of my students had to sit that week out. And they happened to be star players. They were starters. They were very good. They were integral to the team's success. But I had to make the hard decision to put them on the bench for that week. And one of the parents pulled me aside and explained to me that this was a great opportunity to teach these students grace. And he explained to me that, how great would it be to say, yes, you did something wrong, but there's not going to be a punishment for it because that's grace. And I explained that that's not grace at all. In fact, that's just letting them get away with something. I don't know what that is, but it's not grace. What grace is, and I told them this, I said, the grace is in the fact that after they've done the time, after they've kind of served the punishment for what they did, they would be welcomed fully back into the team, fully restored back into the fold, with no further consequences, no repercussions or anything else. Just you saw the consequences of your actions and your decisions, and now it's time to get back to it. Your teammates are frustrated with you. You got to see the team lose. Whether that's a result of you not playing or not, who knows? But that was the idea. And so that's grace, right? And I think for our kids, it's really helping them understand the difference between getting their value with something that they're doing versus getting the value of just who they are, right? We don't want our kids getting the value of their value and their self-worth from what they do. We want them to understand their value and who they are by just simply who they are and how they are loved in Christ, and that He gives them their value. Even us as parents can tell them of their worth and of their value, but where that sits and where that originates is in Jesus. And that's essentially the Jesus-centered home is a home that is full of grace. Does that mean there's no punishments? Of course not. Of course there's punishments. There's consequences for our actions always, right? And sometimes there's natural consequences. We have a brand spanking new minted teenager in our home, and she is learning the incredible value of lessons learned from failure and from consequences. And those are really great things. And sometimes those are, as a parent, those are really, really hard to do. But at the same time, they're incredibly important. So my encouragement today in this short segment is have tons of grace. Let your kids fall down when it's appropriate. Little bit of falling down now saves a lot of falling down later in life. And when we show our kids grace, it helps them see their value in Jesus rather than in what they do. We want them to see their value in their being, not in their doing. Until next time, we'll see you guys soon.